Welcome back to Established Dominance Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Ding, and today we'll cover bye week strategies and how to maximize your lineups for the upcoming season by preparing early on who to target. Now, the last episode, we talked about how to go out and get the players you need. This week, we'll talk about who you need to target. On a funny note, I had a listener comment recently that said they were surprised how lifelike AI podcasts have gotten recently, inferring that I'm simply AI. Well, first of all, thank you. That's a compliment. Secondly, no, unfortunately, I'm real. Sorry to burst your bubble, but thanks for listening anyway. Now, before we jump in, do me a favor. If you appreciate these non-AI podcasts, please hit the like and subscribe buttons and follow us on X at Established Dominance. All right, let's start by getting you caught up on the news and injuries. Mark Andrews is back at practice and looks possible for week 1. Hollywood Brown, on the other hand, is out for week 1 with the shoulder injury. Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb got paid, but the real problem is Chase still has not. He's just sitting on the sidelines wearing his Prada shoes, clutching his Gucci man purse, and getting a manicure. So it looks like he's all about the money. Personally, I hope Cincy trades him or refuses to pay him. Don't draft him in the first round. Odds are he's woefully out of shape, and even if he does play, he'll be ineffective and an injury risk. Pathetic. Puka Nacua is apparently ready, according to the coach. I'm still not buying it, but monitor his practice next week. That'll be the telltale. Brock Bowers' coach says he feels good about him playing week 1. Wow, coach, thanks for that overwhelming vote of confidence. Have Mayer ready as a backup. I still have no idea why they drafted a tight end. I'm sure Raiders fans don't either. They didn't need him, but I digress. Brandon Cooks? He was supposed to return to practice today, but he didn't. And just like Chase, he was supposed to practice all week. Man, these coaches sure are getting confused when they get paid millions of dollars. And apparently Cook's knee soreness, using my air quotes here, has kept him out of practice for almost 2 weeks. Take your Motrin, bro, and rub some dirt on it, for crying out loud. All right, now you're caught up. For our main topic today, having a solid bye week strategy is key to being competitive in your league and downright crucial if you're in a head-to-head league. Now, I've done a lot of work for you in this episode, so you're about 75 to 80% of the way there. But you'll have to personally manage the strategy along the way in case you have to pivot. Now, here's how we'll attack the bye weeks. I'm going to go through them individually each week and offer you targets to go after. The names I provide will be available most weeks, but won't be in order of preference unless I specifically say so. These names are a reflection of what will most likely be there based on their current roster percentages reflected in Yahoo, which are low. And as a general rule, when you're thinking about grabbing one of these players, if there's a team playing Denver, Carolina, or New England, grab their skill players and especially their defense. And here's why I recommend these matchups. It's very possible that all the players available, like the RB2s, the wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s for each week, they're going to be there. And teams playing weak defenses tend to give more opportunities to their middle tier players if they build a big lead. So not only can you get regular time, but garbage time TDs as well. Also, these players will generally be available each week unless a big injury takes them out or makes them the wide receiver 1 or RB1 on their team, in which case you'll try to grab them early if you see that. On a separate note, Minnesota is not getting a whole lot of credit when it comes to defenses playing against it, but they have the players who can put up points. It's not going to be a shutout, so if you're targeting Minnesota thinking that your defense is going to be successful, they still have talent there. So buyer beware, they're tough. Now, as a reminder from last episode, if you're going to go out and grab one of these players to help you during your bye week, you need to target them at least 2 weeks out. In some instances, even more, to ensure that you've got a good chance at getting them. Now, of course, this assumes you have the bench space, so if you don't, you'll have to be patient and hope you win the fab that week. Okay, let's start with the first bye week of the season, week 5. In week 5, we've got 4 teams on the bye: the Chargers, Eagles, Titans, and the Lions. The guys to target who are likely available that week at the quarterback position are Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. At running back, Bucky Irving, Tank Bigsby, Khalil Herbert, and then wide receiver, Thielen, Shakir, McMillan. At tight end, Otton, Conklin, Taysom Hill, and Jonas Smith. And then at kicker, when it comes to kickers, I'm going to mention this here, and it's the same throughout. Take the kicker with the home field advantage, the highest Vegas total over under, and preferably the one that kicks in a dome to avoid weather. And there will be opportunities every week for these. At defense, I'm looking at Seattle and Las Vegas. Now, for defenses, same considerations I just gave you for kickers, but I look for the juicy matchups against weak teams. And as a tiebreaker, I normally favor the home team. Okay, that'll wrap up week 5. In week 6, 4 teams are on the bye. KC, the Rams, Miami, and the Vikings. At quarterback, again, Mayfield should be there. Levis and Carr. These are 3 of the good matchups. At running back, Irving, Algier, and Pierce, the running back of Houston. A wide receiver, we have McMillan again, Khalif Raymond out of Detroit, and some of the others we already talked about. At tight end, Otton, Conklin, Taysom Hill, and then Brock Wright out of Detroit if for some odd reason Laporte is hurt. Kicker, same thing as applied before. And then defense, looking at Cincinnati and Houston. That's the 2 you should be targeting. Moving on to week 7. In week 7, there's only 2 teams that are on a bye. So there's really a limited number of people who are looking to get somebody to pick up. Those 2 teams are Chicago and Dallas. Now, a lot of people have players on those teams, so there's still going to be some competition for guys. Again, at quarterback, Mayfield, Levis, and Carr should be available. Mayfield only has a 33% own rate on Yahoo, so that's something to keep in mind. 11% for Carr, and then Geno Smith could easily be available as well at 30%, and he's another good target for all these weeks. All right, at running back, again, Irving, Algier, and Pierce. At wide receiver, McMillan, Raymond. You're hearing the same thing every week, right? Tight end, Otton, Conklin, Taysom Hill, and Wright out of Detroit. Really depends on Laporta's health there, but the big picture, the reason why I keep saying Otton is I think he's a top 15 tight end. He has a chance to be a breakout. So this is definitely a guy I would target. He's got some juicy matchups. For kicker, same thing. And then for defense, we've got Jacksonville versus New England. Definitely target those guys. Washington versus Carolina. That's kind of the battle of the terrible teams, but I mean, there's going to be some turnovers. And then New Orleans versus Denver. And New Orleans is at home, so that's another juicy matchup. So week 7 is a really good one to target defenses. And you can see, there's some opportunities there for some skill players too. At week 9, we have Pittsburgh and San Francisco. Only 2 teams, but a lot of skill players that need to be replaced. At quarterback, same names we've been talking about. Mayfield, Smith, Levis, and Carr. At running back, Irving, Algier, and Pierce. Wide receiver, McMillan, Raymond, like we talked about. Tight end, again, Otton, Conklin, Hill. Great guys to pick up. Kicker, same things. And then at defense, look at Tennessee at home versus New England. That's a juicy matchup. Washington at the Giants. Again, 2 really bad teams going at it, but turnovers galore. And then New Orleans at Carolina. In week 10, we have 4 teams on a bye now. We have Cleveland, Green Bay, Las Vegas, and Seattle. Now, quarterback, I would normally say Mayfield, but he's got a tough game against San Francisco, so I don't recommend him here. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Daniel Jones is an option. I just vomited in my mouth, but he's got a juicy matchup. And you have Derek Carr against Atlanta at home. That's a decent matchup. A running back, Irving, Algier, and Pierce again. Wide receiver, the same guys we've been talking about. Tight end, same. Kicker, same. And then at defense, some juicy matchups. You've got the Giants at Carolina, KC at home versus Denver. Boy, I'd really be looking at that one. And then Jacksonville at Minnesota. At home against Minnesota. Now, I know KC probably isn't going to be there, but you never know. Somebody could drop them by this point. We are week 10. In week 11, we've got 4 teams. Arizona, Carolina, the Giants, and Tampa Bay. Lots of weak teams here. So you probably don't have much here to make changes to your roster. You probably don't own a whole lot of these guys. This is also the time of the year when players start to get injured and the season starts to take its toll. So look for backups to become starters. Now, Tampa Bay's on a bye. So at quarterback, we can't have Mayfield here, but Carr and Bo Nix also have good matchups. At running back, I'd look for Algier and Pierce. Wide receiver, Khalif Raymond, and the others that we've talked about before. At tight end, Conklin, Hill, maybe Wright, depends on Laporta's health. Kicker, same. And then defense. Got some juicy matchups. We've got the Rams at New England. The Rams are at like 50% less owned, so they could be there. Atlanta at Denver. Any team playing Denver, I'll take it. And then Tennessee at home against Minnesota. For week 12, here's where it gets interesting. We have 6 teams on a bye. Atlanta, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and the Jets. And if you don't act early, you could get left out here. So be aggressive if your bench allows. And this could be one of those times I talked about earlier where you need to go out more than 2 weeks to grab somebody. Now, at quarterback, you need to grab Mayfield. He's going up against the Giants at home. This is a juicy matchup, and you're likely going to be missing a starter here, maybe a quarterback. A lot of popular quarterbacks on these teams. So Mayfield's your guy. Now, another option, any Las Vegas quarterback versus Denver, and Las Vegas is hosting them at home. A running back, Irving and Pierce, again. Wide receiver, the same ones we've been talking about. At tight end, Otton is really your number one guy here. If you can get him early, grab him. And you can see I'm saying a lot of these names the same. I believe Otton is a top 15 talent, easily. And if that's the case, he provides so many plug and play options throughout the season. He's a good backup to have. At kicker, same. And then defense, looking at Las Vegas versus Denver, Tampa Bay at the Giants, and then Chicago at Minnesota. A lot of juicy matchups. Again, these teams have less than 50% ownership on Yahoo, so pretty good. Now, week 13, there are no buys. Week 14, it's 6 teams again. Same rules apply. We have Baltimore, Denver, Houston, Indianapolis, New England, and Washington. So at quarterback, I said his name again, Mayfield. He's going up against Vegas. You have Levis, and then Carr is at the Giants. At running back, same. Wide receiver, same. Tight end, no changes. Kicker, no changes. Defense, looking at Seattle at Arizona and New Orleans at the Giants. And week 14 is the last bye week. Now, just like the Fab waiver wire process, managing bye weeks can be the difference between winning and losing, especially in head-to-head leagues. Keep in mind that everyone we just went through can also be used to block your opponents from picking up a key piece to help their team. Now, take a look at their bye weeks and figure out who they may target and grab them earlier than they do. Sorry, not sorry. I want to go through a list of wide receivers real quick. We only touched on a couple, but there's a couple that could actually make a difference for you throughout the season or each one of these bye weeks. So I'm just going to give you a quick list. We already talked about McMillan a lot, Shakir, Thielen's out there. I think he's going to be a top 20 guy, so I would grab him during these bye weeks if you don't already have him. Aguilar, Walker out of Baltimore, Malik Washington, he could come into his own. KJ Osborne could become something. Noah Brown out of Washington as the number 2. He's got a shot at it. Pierce out of Indianapolis. Scantling, if his injury is gone, out of Buffalo. Pearsall, but he's probably gone. You never know. Dontavian Wicks, he could come into something. Whittington out of the Rams, he's got talent. Shaheed, he's injured right now, but monitor when he comes off of that. So there's a list of wide receivers I just wanted to add there because there's so many that you could potentially pick up during the bye weeks. Now, before we sign off, as always, I want to give a shout out to our men and women in uniform who protect the freedoms we hold dear. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. And finally, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us on X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you can stay up to date on our latest content. Until then, remember, established dominance isn't just a catchphrase. It's a commitment. Are you ready?